Quietly Booked, the official podcast of the Jacksonville Public Library. I'm Gabby.
And I'm Amanda. For this week's podcast, we wanted to try something a little experimental. In 2010, the library started a project called Voices of the First Coast. It was a local initiative modeled after StoryCorps, a nationwide story project designed to record, preserve, and share the stories from our local community. Jacksonville Public Library and the local national public radio station, WJCT, collaborated to capture these oral histories of Northeast Florida.
There's some really compelling stories from random people that were living right here in Jacksonville at the time. Stories of their childhood, their passions, their careers, anything really. And we thought to honor the integrity of this project completed nearly 10 years ago, we would share some of these stories and revive parts of the community that may have been forgotten otherwise. Today's episode is going to follow a loose Coming to America theme. We'll have bits from 3 different interviews of people talking about their birthplaces, growing up, and how they wound up right here in Jacksonville. Here are their stories.
This is a good distance, okay? If you talk like, you don't have to hold it. You can hold it if you want, but don't go too far and don't go too close. This is good, okay? Am I right? Okay. All right, Dad's gonna start just like we did, okay?
Okay.
All right. You tell me when I'm good. Hi, hello. My name is Arthur Nistra. I am 4 years old, and today is August 21st, 2010, and we are here at the West Regional Library, Jacksonville, Florida, and I have with me my son, Alec. He's 5. Alec, what's your full name?
Alec Richie Nistra.
All right, so Alec, we're here so we can tell some story about Daddy and a little bit about you too. You know where Daddy's from, right?
Right.
Where I'm from?
Brazil.
Brazil. You wanna ask me something about that?
Yes.
Okay.
How's it like living in Brazil, Daddy?
Oh, that was very nice, Alec. My whole family is there. My dad, my mom, my sisters. But Daddy was very poor. It was a very hard life. I never had money to buy nice things and do nice things. So I had a friend who was living in New York, and he invited me to come here work with him. By the way, did you know that Daddy used to work in New York? I used to live in New York. Did you know that?
Yes.
Yes, I told you before, right?
Right. When we're going in,
That's why I met your mommy. We met in New York.
Hmm?
Did you know that? No? When Mommy was a flight attendant. Yeah.
No, I didn't know that.
You know what Dad used to do in New York?
What?
Well, when I got there, I didn't know anybody. So, I didn't know how to speak English very well. I only speak Portuguese. So nobody understood Daddy. So Daddy had to do all kind of strange work, like selling hot dogs, and Daddy was painting walls and washing dishes and all kind of hard stuff. But Daddy learned English. Daddy went to a school there, and I learned English. Then I met Mommy, and we decided to move to Jacksonville. Now, is there anything about Jacksonville you want to ask Daddy?
Yes.
What is that?
How is it like living in Jacksonville?
Okay. When I moved to Jacksonville with Mommy, everything was very different. I didn't know anybody. Daddy was a little scared, but it was very nice, Alec. In Jacksonville, I had the chance to go back to school. I finished doing got done my professional career. I invested in my job. I got a nice job, so Daddy could buy nice things for you. And that's why the new house you live in now is all because there. And in Jacksonville was very nice with Daddy on that way. But what's the best thing about Jacksonville ever?
What?
It was the you.
Oh, well.
That's why I have you. That was the
Mom
best
a
thing about
question?
Jacksonville. Do you have another question for Daddy? Yeah, go ahead.
Was Jacksonville different than New York, or was it the same?
Oh no, Jacksonville is very different, Alec. Very different than New York. New York is a big city, and they have very, very tall buildings everywhere. They have trains and buses, and it's a very busy place. It's fun too. They have lots of museums and lots of art. And Jacksonville is a little different. Here in Jacksonville, you have to go a long way. If you want to go to work, you have to drive, and in New York, you just get the subway. But Jacksonville was great, like I said, and I think one of the best things was definitely having you. I love you very much. Do you want to ask your daddy anything else?
Yes.
Okay.
When you're living in New York and you moved to Jacksonville, what did you see on the airplane?
I saw the ocean.
Oh, well, that's a good sight.
All right, and Alec, I just let you know that even though that Daddy and Mommy don't live in the same house anymore, we love you very much. Okay?
Yes.
Give me a hug. Are you done? We're done.
Yeah.
Yes.
Believe it.
So you're saying this or I'm saying this?
You're both saying it. I'm saying it first. I'll turn it to you afterwards.
Okay.
Are we ready? Yep. My name is Marika Steven. I am 31 years old. Today is August 17th, 2010, and we are at the main library in Jacksonville, Florida.
And I'm Bandu Besivin. I'm 66 years old. Today is August 17th, 2010, and we're in the main library in Jacksonville, Florida.
So, you were born in 1944, and you were raised in post-war Germany. Tell me about that time and what you learned from that experience.
Well, growing up in post-war Germany, I can remember the early years when basically the cities were bombed out. We lived in a small apartment surrounded by ruins. My early childhood was playing in those ruins, and the school that I went to was understaffed. We didn't have enough teachers, we didn't have enough supplies, we didn't have enough food, so it was all pretty bad. But as a kid, I didn't really notice that because I didn't know any different. I think my parents were the one who really suffered, and they had already suffered through the war. I'm the youngest of 3 children, and my brother, who is 5.5 years older, remembers those years quite well, and the years of the war too, when the bombers came and bombed the cities and stuff like that. But I don't remember that. I was a pretty happy kid, and my parents really did a great job of raising me without these bad situations being too vivid, I guess, in my memory.
When did you move to the house that the family still has in Hildesheim?
My parents had lost everything in the war, so we didn't have any material things. And my father got employment in Hildesheim, the little town just south of Hanover in former Northwest Germany. And from that little apartment, they very early on rented a little garden outside of town, which is very, very popular to grow vegetables and have flowers. And that was actually quite a big help. And my mother grew up on a farm in the country, not far from where we actually then settled down. So we had a lot of bike trips out to the garden and stuff like that. But at some point they decided to buy a little plot of land and build their house.
So they built that house?
we built it actually partially with our own hands. We dug out the foundation and we helped just getting everything prepared. And I remember one of the things that I really remember very well was going to a Stony Brook, which was about a mile up the hill from our house, and with a little wooden carriage we moved stones from that place down to our house to build a little walkway around the house, which is still existing with natural stones. And my father and my brother and my sister and I, we did that basically by hand. So that was kind of interesting.
I can see why Uncle Dieter is a little not looking forward to selling that house. Why he wants to hold on to it.
My brother is very fond, even though he has lived there the shortest time of all the children. I was there who lived there the longest. But since his memories are so much clearer of all these hard times, also with my parents, emotionally it is a much bigger issue for him, I'm sure. Yeah.
So, what were some of the lessons you learned from that experience?
Well, one of the things that I learned is that material things are relative. And while when you start from nothing and you build a life, then you realize that, you know, what makes you happy and what makes you successful. And it turned out to be material things are not the thing. And that was reinforced later in life by a couple of events. The other thing is, and I think my father was very clear, since we didn't have anything, he said very pointedly that to be successful you have to study, you have to learn, because that's the only way out of, you know, not having any things. And he comes from a family of academicians, and he, because of World War I, didn't get the opportunity to go to the university, which was his biggest disappointment in life. But he wanted to make sure that his kids had that opportunity. And well, didn't really go too well with the kids. I was pretty much not interested in learning and didn't do very well in school. My brother had his problems and didn't make it to graduate from gymnasium to go to university. And my sister had health problems, so that she also didn't make it to university, made it to middle school, and she became a teacher later on. So when I failed somewhere in 7th grade, my father was not very happy, and he walked to the teacher on a weekly basis. And in Germany, you go to school with a group of classmates, and through all the years, once you pass the exam to go to higher education, and you have to pass all grades, all subjects. And if you fail in 2, you have to repeat the year. Well, I repeated 1 year, and then at the first half of the year that was over and we got our grades, and I failed again in 3, my father was very upset with me. So he said, you know, this is really not right. And so I finally realized that, you know, maybe I should apply myself a little more. And I made it then into the next grade with 1 F equivalent. And my brother had gone to the United States because he didn't have any future after he did some farming, you know, because of my mother's background. But then when he came back from the States, and I was now about 3 years before graduation, which is after 13 years of schooling, he said, you better get your act together. And that's when I started to actually study. And luckily it was not too late. So I actually did well enough to graduate and then make it to the university, which was, of course, for my parents, my father in particular, a big relief.
Well, and then you made up for lost time later in life. Tell me how you came over to the States.
Well, since my brother had gone to the United States and stayed, and then went through a second pathway to go through community college and worked very hard to then actually graduate from college and graduate from graduate school, and now he's professor at Vanderbilt. So I thought that maybe I should apply myself, but I didn't know what to do. And after I've graduated from gymnasium, I went to psychological testing, which was a very new thing at that time, to see what my skills and abilities were, because I was looking for something. So this was a whole day of testing, and in the evening you had then the interview. And after the interview, I asked, so what are my abilities here? And the answer was, well, you don't really have any special skills, but you can do anything you want. I said, well, that was very helpful. And then I went to the University of Berlin, the Free University of Berlin, which was actually created in West Berlin because the university, Humboldt University, was in East Berlin, and that was in the Russian sector. So I went to Berlin to study all kinds of subjects, from theology to engineering to art to medicine, or pre-med at that time, and English. And then after that semester, I realized that natural science probably the best thing. And at that time, natural science means going towards medicine. It was not necessarily that I wanted to go into medicine, but that was the way to go. And then I realized, no, that's what I want to do. And I didn't do too well in the first semester either. I flunked physics, and that wasn't very good. So I said, I really have to do something better than that. But the motivation was really not just to study. It was really, I wanted to come to the United States. Well, my parents said, there's no way that we let you go to the United States as long as we have something to say, and we have something to say until you're 21 and pay for you. So it was somewhat of a blow, and I was pretty upset with my parents. I was very upset with my parents, so I walked away from home for about a couple of days, and then I returned, and then I said, well, I have to find my own way, I guess, to get to the United States. So I applied for a Fulbright scholarship, which I then, for whatever reason, got, and came to the States to a small college in Wisconsin, Appleton, Wisconsin, Lawrence University, which was a wonderful experience, because coming from the big free university in Berlin to a small college where everything's prepared was just unbelievable for me. And the professors, small classes, was wonderful.
My name is Jenny Bass. I am 36 years old. Today is August 17th, 2010, and we are at the main library in Jacksonville, Florida.
My name is Juan Galano. I go by John Galano. I am 62 years old. Today is August the 17th, 2010, and we are at the main library in Jacksonville, Florida.
Okay, Dad, I wanted to find out more about and get this on record. I thought it's an interesting story to share. Let's start out with first, you were born in Cuba, but what part of Cuba? And wanted to talk about what life was like growing up there.
Sure. I was born in Havana, Cuba, which is the capital and the biggest city of Cuba. I grew up there in Havana, in a suburb of Havana. I grew up in Cuba, and as I remember my childhood, I think was kind of equivalent to the children growing up in the United States. We were very close to the United States in our way of living. It was a very happy childhood. My parents are professionals, and at that time my dad was an attorney in Havana, and my mother was an English teacher. I went to a private school, Catholic school, as most of us Cubans are Catholic. I lived a very happy life, and those the times we did the same things I think the American kids did here. After homework and coming home, I'll do my homework, and then I go ride a bicycle, play baseball. We would go to the movies on the weekends with my family, go to the drive-in for ice cream. It was a very happy life at that time, and very good times.
So then at what point did you realize that you were going to have to leave to come here, and how old were you, and how long did you have to prepare to leave?
Well, we never, of course, growing up, like you grew up here, you never think that you're going to go in another country. I never thought I would live anywhere else. I thought, that I would just speak Spanish and, live in Cuba, of course. All of a sudden, in 1959, Fidel Castro takes over the country, promising better things like all politicians do. And turns out that he, very shortly after that, becomes a communist. I was about 12, 13 years old, and my father was a very wise person, and he grew up and went to school with Fidel Castro because he was studying to be an attorney. Castro went to the University of Havana with my father, and he knew the kind of person he was, a little bit rebellious and so on, and he started seeing things change. He'd taken over all the businesses and so on and so forth, and he one day I was at the house, and he said to me, he said, "Go get your sister at school. We're going to the United States. We're going to have to leave because they're taking over everything. This is going to be a military. They take a ship. The Russians, Chinese, all kinds of lousy government people are going to come here." So I went to get my sister, and I think it was like, I don't know if that afternoon in 1961 or the next morning, we left our house just the same way that you left your house when you came here to the library. I never saw our house again.
So you couldn't take anything with you? We
took only some a few change of clothes. They wouldn't let us take any money or jewelry and so on and so forth, because we told them we were coming on vacation, or else we wouldn't have been able to come. And
how did you choose what city to move to?
Well, the flights were from Havana. We went to Miami, which everybody was, and the exile community was already going to Miami, and went to Miami for a few months. Miami back then in 1961 was a very country. There was not a lot of things going on. It's not like today. So there was not a lot of jobs, and so my dad stayed there for a little while, and he had a friend in Jacksonville, was a Cuban friend. Had been here a few years longer, and he found out about my dad, and he invited him over to Jacksonville to help him get a job. So we came to Jacksonville. Matter of fact, in that same 1961, I've been here.
Did you have any expectations of how life was going to be like here before you got here?
Well, we had been here before on vacation, so
I didn't know that.
We've been here 2 or 3 times on vacations, and my expectations were, of course, that we ride around, and at that time we go to Howard Johnson's for breakfasts and hot dogs and things, and hamburgers and shakes. The United States, we did not have that regularly in our own day of lives. We ate more Cuban sandwiches and other things. So I thought everything was going to be in that respect. But as time went by, of course I came without speaking English. My dad did not speak English, and my mother was the only one.
How long did it take for you to learn English?
I recall that perhaps to understand it, first of all, it might have taken a good sort of 2 or 3 years to start comprehending it in a sort of in a regular way, and a little bit, of course, longer to be able to communicate it and with expressing with my yes.
Okay, so how did life change for you and the family when you got here?
Very good. Well, as I told you, growing up there, my dad was an attorney, and my mother was an English teacher. And, we were not rich people, but Cuba did have a middle class back then. And lived comfortably. We had a car, and we had a maid, and even when my dad got hurt, we even had a chauffeur because my dad couldn't drive. But so when we came here, of course, we didn't have any money. It was very drastic change. I had maybe a couple of shirts and 2 or 3 pants that I had to wear over and over. And I remember my first bicycle was a girl's bike going to school, which I was very embarrassed. I always had the latest model of bike.
Did you get teased for the girl's bike?
Yeah, I think I got teased. The combination of, as you can imagine, teased and not being able to answer, and have that little growing. It took me a few years to get that going properly.
So, did you or your family ever want to go back once you got here?
Every Cuban just about that left during those years, since we did live in a very comfortable country and surroundings back then, everyone wanted to go back. See, we were, you have to understand that we were not immigrants. We were not looking for better conditions. It was actually political. We thought we would just, I thought any time within 6 months, a year and a half, 2 years went by, we were going to go back and
you didn't think it was going to be permanent?
Yeah, we never thought, my parents and no one ever did think it was going to be permanent, because, we didn't want it to be permanent due to the fact that, we had a better living where we were from.
Right.
And, it was easier for my parents to get along with their native language, which is, very easy to get along with the Spanish, because my dad, especially being an attorney, as you can imagine, it will be hard for him to have that kind of a job because they have to speak proper English.
Right. Well, I know that at the beginning it was difficult because you came with nothing, but I know that you and Abuelo, your father, became both very successful, both of you, and so I wonder how this experience, you think, shaped your success.
What happened, I think, is the fact that my parents had a good foundation, and I think my entire kind of family, my uncle was a doctor, my aunts had doctors in education, my grandfather was a doctor. They had good foundations of good habits of work and responsibility. So my dad started working in an insurance company and learning more English, taking courses to improve and better himself. And through time, because of his well-rounded education, was able to be successful. And as you know, he retired as the vice president and the director of international affairs for insurance company. And I have a sister, who also went to private school and became a teacher, and she's been successful by raising, as you know, four children, which are all successful too. And myself, I think I had some good habits from my parents as far as trying to be responsible and saving money and not wasting it. And I was able to learn, as you know, about the automobile business, and was able to retire from that business.
So I know that you went back to Cuba a couple of times. Now, how was it when you returned?
I went back to Cuba for the first time in about 48, 49 years. I've been wanting to go back, and I was afraid in the beginning, a few years, because as it is a communist country, and they do have their own rules and laws, and they can change anything they want to. So I was a little bit afraid, but I went because I wanted to see the land again. I wanted to see how the people live and so on. I was able to do that, and the change is like it's like day and night. There are very, very they're in very bad living conditions from the start of paint to toilet paper to toothpaste to washing fluids to you name it. They are, because communism does not do well anywhere. They just about, Cuba is about one of the last one or two countries in the world under communism. So they are only interested there, Castro and his immediate people. They're only interested in themselves, and they give the rest of the country just enough to get by. That's all they're interested in. So that way they don't have anything else, and they have to be concerned every day of how they're going to eat and so on. So they don't have time. People ask me that, why don't they throw him out of power? I say, well, they don't have time and the means for it because they're so occupied just trying to get by on something to eat, and they do it on purpose. He keeps the people that way.
Would your parents ever want to go back? I know they're in their
My
80s.
father would never go back at all. He will not give that government a penny, he says,
Right.
and I don't blame him because he lost everything. Him and most of his family, a lot of them lost a lot of their things and their country. My mother, of course, says she would like to see it, but my mother at her age, I advise her that it would be so difficult because everything is difficult there. Everything is difficult. You just cannot go in the middle of the afternoon or at night to a convenience store to get a bag or a bottle of aspirin if you need it. You just don't.
Right.
They just don't.
Right.
That doesn't exist like that.
Okay. I think that's all I have, Dad. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
Well, Jenny, just the fact that we Cuban Americans are very, very proud to be Cuban Americans, and I think that most of the Cubans are a supporter of the American way. And we're proud of the fact that I'm an American citizen, and
you started from scratch. I mean, you worked your way up, right?
Exactly. And of course, my you were all born here, and we are Americans, and right. I'm always saying you have to protect, and also speak highly of this country, because this is the last country in the world that fights all the problems in the world. So we have to be careful about that. And when we were in Cuba, I recall being a kid, I could see that we thought that would never happen to us. Boom, one day we're out of a country. You never know where you're at. All empires have come to an end sooner or later. I hope this one never does.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for listening, and we really hope you enjoyed the stories from our 2010 Voices of the First Coast project.
You can access all of the interviews on our website under Special Collections in the digital collection, but we certainly hope you enjoyed this episode because we would really like to highlight some more of these interviews in future podcasts. If you liked this episode, please be sure to review and comment wherever you stream your podcasts from. And until next time, I'm Gabby.
And I'm Amanda.
Bye, guys.